Hey everyone, how are you doing? I'm Tom Curley, an independent developer working on Memento Vivi. But what is Memento Vivi? It's basically a hybrid between an action platformer and a card game that is about living in the present and not being anchored to the past. In Memento Vivi, you explore distant but still intense memories of a kingdom that met its end in a mysterious way, using cards to reach new areas and fight weird abstract enemies. Cards themselves represent memories, either your character's or someone else's, usually found in important or secret places. As always, it's been a while since the latest devlog, but I kept working on the game without too many obstacles. To be honest, I just find being active on social media a bit hard, that's all. I'm trying to post more frequently on Twitter, so follow me there, just don't expect much. From the development side, I've been doing pretty good. There are a lot of new things to talk about and I'm proud of my game, even if I'm still far away from the finish line. Progress is still slow, but that's kind of how I'm taking life at the moment. I'm trying not to stress too much over it. Lastly, before going in depth about the game, I wanted to thank you all for the support, both close friends and people who follow me on social media. It means a lot to me and you help me keep going. If you're interested in Memento Vivi's progress, please subscribe. Last time I said that I felt the need to make people play my game again, so that's what I did. I focused on making the game playable and functional, without spending too much time on polishing secondary features. Of course, with game development being its usual funny self, I pretty much had to resize every single element of my game, and remake the demo level pretty much from scratch. In the past, I didn't pay too much mind on things like pixels per unit and pixel consistency. That's because I never made a game as big or as polished as Memento Vivi. But in this case I had to learn the hard way how to properly set up an orthographic camera, how to correctly scale all my sprites and so on. This work took a lot of time, and there are still some little quirks, annoying quirks, like the fact that playing the game in some specific resolutions makes your camera size bigger. Why? But I know I will get there. Now that everything is scaled down, I had to rebalance every movement option, every mechanic, every card, every elevator, and so on. It was a tedious process, but it let me reflect upon my main character attributes. I then worked on finishing up my cast of enemies. Currently, there are 3 of them. The Knight, a robust melee enemy with a dynamic moveset with some ranged attacks. The Canine, or fox or dog, whatever you want. The fastest enemy, more fragile but way more aggressive. The enemy of every playtester, to be honest. And the Mage, a projectile-based enemy that keeps itself at range from the player character. If you followed Memento Vivi's progress, you may remember that in previous versions of the game, projectiles were the standard. Enemies couldn't move and would only shoot at the player. Now they enter the battle arena, choose from different kinds of attacks based on their preferred distance, and are generally way more dynamic and interesting than before. I'm very happy with this change. I made a lot of new sounds. By the way, I love recording new sounds, it's very fun. Added visual feedback, slowdown and other useful stuff to make the game systems more clear. I even took some weeks to relearn how to use FL Studio and try to make some music with the help of a close friend of mine. Thank you! I finally had a new working demo. So, what did I actually make? What is present in the demo? The demo features a single, big level divided in 4 main areas, with a total of 5 battles, one of them being optional. There are 12 cards in total to find and use, some of them being necessary for progress. There are obstacles, levers, secrets, platforming challenges, and so on. I even managed to make one music track that plays during battles, with an additional dynamic layer that plays when you're low on life. There's lots of stuff here, and making sure it was comprehensible was pretty hard. In fact, some of it wasn't, but that's okay. Playtests exist for this reason. See what works, what doesn't, and what players don't get. It was time to start playtesting after 6 months of work and solitude. I made some private playtests with friends while on a Discord call. I told them I would not answer any questions about the game, the experience would have to explain itself. I would only jump in case of bugs or if I felt the need to ask them specific questions. So how did I keep track of players' feelings, behaviors and feedback? I did not make many playtests. At the moment of writing, there have been 9 sessions in total. But it's still a lot of info for a single person, so here's the 3 main ways that I accomplish this task. Recording sessions, taking notes, and making a form for players to compile after closing the demo. I record every session as a backup, and in case I want to study a certain player behavior or figure out how a bug happened. Taking notes is a crucial thing to do during every session. I write down expected or unexpected behaviors, moments of struggle or confusion, things that I could fix, add or remove to make the experience clearer, and so on. Lastly, a form to help players give me feedback in a more structured way. Reviewing the summary of current answers is very helpful, and I will keep making forms for every demo. A little tip that I learned from a good teacher of mine. When making questions along the lines of on a scale from X to Y, how would you rate this thing, etc, make it a scale from 1 to 4. Very negative, negative, positive, very positive. No in-betweens, in order to eliminate neutral, less useful answers. There was also one last piece of feedback that I would directly ask my players during the call, after the form was done, but I'll touch on that later. Some of the playtests went very smoothly, some fine, okay, others a bit frustrating, and I mean that from the player's perspective. But every single one of them was extremely helpful for Memento Vivi. I need to make some more frequent playtests to remind myself on why I'm making a game. It was always very satisfying when players would exclaim "yes" after winning a fight they struggled on, or something like that. It's amazing, it's the best feeling ever when you're seeing your game being played, creating a unique experience for players. I will now tell you how playtests went, in more or less chronological order. The first playtest went okay. The player was having fun, but I noticed various problems in the game. Some tutorials needed a bit more information, some mechanics like dodging a bit more polish, better feedback all around, and I noticed that the last fight, without having found all optional cards, was virtually impossible to beat. Good. The player's damage output was not high enough to kill the enemy, since the last enemy heals himself. Oops, sorry. So, after this playtest I made many fixes, rebalanced enemies and level design, and tried again. I made 2 more playtests after these fixes, and from these ones I found some more flaws in the game, both from the action side and the strategy one. First of all, dodging was inconsistent and caused frustration, and many aspects of the card system were confusing. The game's UI was at fault for some of these problems. Thankfully, now every battle was beatable, even if the last one was still a bit too hard. Additionally, one of these playtesters found a very cool technique that combined sliding and dodging for a faster, lower dodge. Love it. I realized what needed even stronger feedback. Even if sprites or text were still placeholdery, they still needed to be clear and visible. Then I worked on polishing up the dodge mechanic for a more consistent and satisfying dodge. The demo was getting better and better with every fix, and I was feeling pretty good about it. The next two playtests went more smoothly. I was starting to notice that some hidden cards were a bit too hidden, so I polished up the level design again, and many other small tweaks. A big flaw that I worked on after these playtests was the fact that you could dodge during your hit animation, so if you got hit and immediately dodged, it seemed like you dodged correctly but still took damage. So I added a small hit stun period in which you cannot dodge after getting hit for a better feedback and feel. I'm still working on the dodge mechanic and considering tweaking it. Some players still feel that they were precise with their input but still got hit, so I'll keep an eye out for this. At the time of writing, I made other playtests that went fine, without too many issues, at least not major ones. But it's still very interesting to see how small inconsistencies or errors can shape an experience for the worse. So, small tweaks are still very important in the grand scheme of things, like how I wrote some icon descriptions for cards. It's very important to remember that you, as a developer, cannot fairly experience your own game anymore. You will automatically take things for granted simply because you made them, which might be aspects of the game that could confuse new players. Always try to put yourself in the player's shoes. Here's what I noticed in all my playtests. This is based on notes and form answers. I'll start with the positives, what is currently working and is liked by playtesters. Platforming and movement, especially for players that were using a controller. Visuals, sounds and particularly animations. Enemies, battles, cards and card lore. Exploration and level design, and lastly, length and difficulty. One interesting thing to talk about is that even if new dynamic enemies are way better than the old projectile-only ones, the most liked enemy of the demo was the mage. The projectile-only one. I think that it's probably because his attacks are more fun to dodge and react to in the current demo, which heavily rewards dodging. And now, time to talk about some negative aspects of the game. 1. Not all systems of the game are clear and understandable. Some things confuse players, and the lackluster UI did not help. For example, the timer shown during battles is very hard to see. Attack cards are considered more interesting than others. Some cards were rarely used, like the one that gives more invincibility after getting hit. Sorry, Netha. Using cards was interesting and fun, but many players felt the desire for a quicker and more dynamic card selection. To add some more depth to this last point, I'll talk about the question that I would ask every player after they completed their form. Do you think that removing turns from battles would improve the experience? Let me explain that question. In this last 6 months of playtest-less work, I added more enemies, a better level and many new game elements. But most importantly of all, I added the feature of using cards outside of battles. In the previous demo, you could only use cards in battles, nowhere else. For a more consistent, original and elegant design, I worked on this very important feature. It was a lot of work, but I think it was an objective improvement of the game. Thinking back on it now, it seems weird to not have had this aspect of the game in its design from the very start, but it's like I'm discovering what Memento Vivi is by working on it. So, why would I want to remove turns from battles? They are functional, fun, and offer a good compromise of action and strategy. So why change what is working? It's precisely because of what I explained earlier. For a more consistent, original and elegant design. I also think that the experience would be more fun this way, so I'm willing to try this big change moving forward. I'll go a bit more in depth, but I think that it will be easier to talk about when I have some more practical work in progress to show. At the moment, opening the card menu is pretty slow and it locks you in place, both in exploration and in combat. You cannot move when the menu is open. Then, combat itself, even if way better than before, is still pretty static and repetitive. The winning tactics are the usual ones. Dodge enemy attacks until the timer runs out, position yourself as close to the enemy as possible, then choose your attacks. Like I said, this works and is pretty fun, but every resource, mechanic, element that I had to add to make this turn-based system work could be removed for a more streamlined, action-based experience. For my next demo, hopefully a short time from now, I want to try to remove turns from battles and make card selection way faster, possible in the air, and without stopping the player's momentum. After playtesting this action-based demo, I will decide on the future of Memento Vivi. Turns or no turns? Let me know what you think. As always, I thank you with all my heart for listening to my devlog. I can't promise to be more active or to post X amount of videos every month, so I won't. Just know that I will keep working on this game, because I love doing so. I love Memento Vivi, and I hope that players will too in the future. If everything goes well, the next demo, or maybe the one after that, will be public for everyone to play. Thank you for listening. See you soon. Subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Kisses.